There are many geopolitical players that are contributing to the rising tensions in the Middle East. Yes, they're rising even more than before, which were dramatically escalated on Tuesday when President Trump violated the United States' end of the Iran deal and pulled out of it, reimposing sanctions on Iran based on virtually non-existent evidence that they were violating the deal. Even his own national security team, at least most of them, told him that they weren't violating it, in addition to the United Nations. But since Obama signed it, it had to go. But I digress. The major players in this escalating conflict involving Iran are Iran, of course, the U.S., Russia, Syria, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, with the U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia on one side, and Iran, Syria, and Russia on the other, although Russia also has ties with Israel and has a better relationship with them than they had previously. And with John Bolton as National Security Advisor whispering in Trump's intellectually incurious ear, as well as Netanyahu influencing Trump, these sides could be the sides in World War III. I say that a tiny bit jokingly, but not really, because that's how disastrous Trump's decision was on Tuesday. And the effects of these escalating tensions are already revealing themselves. Israel and Iran moved a step closer to outright war Thursday after Israel pounded Iranian military targets in Syria in response to rockets fired at Israeli army positions in the Golan Heights. The exchanges follow months of rising tensions over Iran's growing military activities in Syria. Israel has repeatedly hit Iranian positions over the border and braced itself for blowback. Shortly after midnight Thursday, that Iranian response finally came, the first time Tehran has struck Israel from inside Syria. Iran has taken advantage of the chaos in Syria to build a substantial military infrastructure there. It has built and trained large militias with thousands of fighters and sent advisors from its Revolutionary Guard Corps to Syrian military bases. So that's just not a strike and a public outrage from Iran, like when the US struck Syria. That's strike and a retaliation. That is way, way, way scarier and moves us way closer to war than before. John Bolton is chomping at the bit because he can finally get his war with Iran. All he has to do is say, well, golly gee, they attacked our very close ally Israel. We are going to have to defend Israel's right to exist. And off we go. And a multinational war in the Middle East because the neocons around Trump wanted war and because Trump has a disgusting obsession with undoing everything Obama ever did, and because Netanyahu is jumping at his opportunity for more aggression, and because Saudi Arabia wants to win control over the Middle East over Iran, which is Shia. So yes, Iran isn't blameless here, of course. They have a wildly oppressive government. But when we go to war, remember who tore up the peace deal. It was America under Trump, not Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that his country's forces had hit almost all of Iran's infrastructure in Syria in retaliation. The UK-based monitoring group, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, said 23 people had been killed in the Israeli strikes. According to Israel's military, 20 rockets were fired towards Israeli military positions in the Golan Heights, territory captured from Syria and occupied by Israel during the 1967 Six Days War. Israel officially annexed the Golan Heights in 1981, a move that hasn't been recognized by the international community. Lieberman said 4 rockets were shot down by the Iron Dome air defense system, and the other 16 landed in Syrian territory, and that no Israeli citizens were harmed or property damaged. Last night, Iran tried to attack Israeli sovereign territory and failed, he said. All right, let me stop right there. It is not your sovereign territory. You have annexed it illegally, as Vice mentioned. It is not recognized by the UN, the international community, and in case you were wondering about the credibility of this guy Lieberman, he was the same guy who said that there were, quote, no innocent people in Gaza, which is genocidal talk, by the way, supremacist talk. And none of these articles are leading with this, but the New York Times said this towards the end of their piece. The barrage came after an apparent Israeli missile strike against a village in the Syrian Golan Heights late Wednesday. So it is Israel who initiated the aggression, as has been pointed out on Twitter. That's incredibly important. And I'd like to give you this caveat. I 100% support Israel's right to exist. I really do. I believe that with the right leadership, Israel could live peacefully in the Middle East and strike a peace deal. But their leadership now is beyond aggressive, and they commit human rights atrocities on a regular basis, and we give them aid. So yes, I'm going to be critical of them. And yes, Iran also commits human rights abuses, but we don't give them aid. And again, they were not the ones who pulled out of the peace deal. And according to the New York Times, they were not the ones who initiated fire in this case. Israel is the one pushing, and they could lead us into war because this has been the response. In a sign of international concern that the conflict could escalate, Britain, France, Germany, and Russia were quick to call for calm. Moscow, which enjoys warm ties with Israel and has had ever closer relations with Iran in recent years, in particular called for restraint from all parties. The White House condemned the missile attack on Israel, saying in a statement that it strongly supported Israel's right to act in self-defense and called on Iran to take no further provocative steps. So as was the case with Boris Johnson, the very conservative UK, essentially Secretary of State, pleading with Trump not to pull out of the Iran deal and saying that the UK won't pull out themselves, the international community is attempting to de-escalate. Our allies are attempting to de-escalate. Even Russia is attempting to de-escalate. But the US under Trump is like, no, Israel has the right to defend itself, and Iran, they did it. They went after them. And with this warmongering administration, we will follow Israel to the end of the earth because it's an excuse for more war. Great. The strikes did not come out of the blue. Tensions over Iran's presence in Syria in support of Syrian President Bashar Assad have been building for months, with Israel repeatedly stating its determination to prevent Tehran entrenching its forces on the Israeli border. To underline its position, Israel has allegedly, it has neither confirmed nor denied it was responsible, carried out a series of raids on Iranian military sites in Syria in recent weeks. Yossi Meckelberg, head of international relations at Regent's University London, said that while an Iranian response to the Israeli strikes were expected, Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the nuclear deal would have only brought the parties closer to conflict by emboldening hardliners within Iran and fueling the sense Iran was under attack by their American and Israeli enemies. Israel's strike on Iran Tuesday came just hours after Trump made the announcement. What were the MAGA bros saying about the Nobel Peace Prize? Oh, right. They don't know a goddamn thing. All Trump did was escalate conflict between Iran and Israel, with Saudi Arabia snacking on popcorn on the sidelines. The escalation of these conflicts is no joke. Donald Trump has removed diplomacy as an option by scrapping a hard-fought deal that required Iran to give up a good amount and the US to give up nothing, pretty much. They now know that they can't reason with this administration with words. And now they might creep closer and closer and closer to Israel's border through Syria, and Israel might continue to respond militarily. I mean, they definitely will. And you think the US won't get involved? Of course we will. Buckle up.